Welcome to About the Winelands. In this show, we will be chatting to leaders, influencers, wine producers, restaurants, and other role players. Tune in every week for our latest episode. You will find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. Welcome back to About the Winelands. Today I'm speaking to Boela Gerber. Boela is the winemaker at Groot Constantia wine estate in Cape Town. Welcome to About the Winelands, Boela.
Thank you very much, Will. Lucky to be with you.
No, thank you for taking the time. We always appreciate it because we know you guys are busy, especially this time of year. So, I know our listeners appreciate that as well. Boela, if I can start off, can you maybe give us a little bit of a background about yourself and how you became involved in the wine industry?
This is it's quite interesting. It really happened. It was sort of happened upon the industry by chance. I went to Stellenbosch to study science. I enjoyed science at school and sort of most sort of living things. And then at university, I was in Dagbreek, and a few of the guys in Res actually did viticulture. It just sounded like a lot more fun. So the first years were very similar. And then they persuaded me to say, listen, yeah, but what do you do with the straight BSc? It's actually a lot more fun to do winemaking. So and there was they checked it out, and it actually was really interesting. I sort of felt, obviously being in Stellenbosch, a lot of wine as a student, Stellenbosch student, a lot of wine consumption in the early years. So so it made a lot of sense. I really happened upon it. Didn't know anything about it, not from a wine farming background at all, but the studying part was really interesting. And then I think as a young winemaking intern, I did my first vintage we had to do internship in our final year. So my first vintage was 95. I did it at a wine farm called Stel, which is becoming more popular again. Ernie Els Properties bought out Stel, but Stel at the time, the winemaker was a guy called Andre van Rensburg. He's the winemaker at Vergelegen for the last 20-something years now. And Andre was my first boss and mentor, and he's a very passionate and very, very knowledgeable winemaker. And he really, I think it was contagious, Andre's passion and knowledge for wine. So, from going from textbook knowledge to sort of putting that into practice, years ago as a young winemaker was just absolutely amazing. So I really, really fell in love with winemaking early on.
Well, that's amazing. Boela, I mean, everything makes sense. I just don't understand. Did you put the fact that you were in Dagbreek on your CV? Because how did they allow you in?
Well, I think where were you? I think we should continue this conversation after the podcast.
We'll continue this conversation after the podcast. Boela, sorry about that. Can you give us? I mean, that's interesting. So you started working there, and how long ago when did you move to Groot Constantia?
Like I said, because the university's wine cellar is more experimental, so we had to do like a 3-4 month internship. That was my final year, and Andre and I we really got along very well. And Andre actually asked me to join the farm on a permanent basis at the end of my studies. So I joined Stellenzicht permanently after my studies. Andre left a few years later for Vergelegen, and then I went to Rickety Bridge, which is an amazing experience. Rickety Bridge, small little wine farm out in Franschhoek, beautiful valley, and the wines were really awesome. Where I had to look after the vineyards as well as the winery, which is quite a great learning curve, I think, for a young winemaker to do that whole thing from planting vineyards and pruning and the whole sort of vineyard management through to the bottle. I think was a very good learning experience for me. And I was in Franschhoek for 2 years, and then I only joined Groot Constantia. I joined Groot Constantia January 2001. So 2-3 years in Stellenbosch, another 2 years in Franschhoek before I moved to the deep south.
Wow! So you're going in for 20 years Groot Constantia. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good innings, huh?
That's amazing. So, talking about Groot Constantia, can you share a bit of the history of Groot Constantia, because that's quite interesting. I think our listeners will enjoy that.
Yeah, geez. Well, how much time do you have?
You can
Yeah,
talk,
so
right?
I'll be.
As
No,
long as
I'll
you
be
don't, as long
very.
as
I'll
you
be.
don't get boring, they'll listen.
No, listen, yeah, I'm very blessed. It's such an amazing estate. So Groot Constantia, as most of you will know, goes back to 1685. I mean, it's a very long time ago. Just to put things in perspective, that Groot Constantia is older than Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wow.
There's Cabernet Sauvignon only was a natural cross of Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc that happened naturally in the border region, late 16, early 1700s. So just yeah, if you talk about, people talk about legendary Dom Perignon that was supposed to make the first champagne or not. Um, and Dom Perignon also lived in that same era, sort of, mid 1600s. So even on an international scale, Groot Constantia is not a newcomer to the international wine scene. Um, so yeah, so it was the first owner of Groot Constantia was Simon van der Stel. And if you look at the Cape Colony at the time, it was quite a very small colony of sort of yeah, motley crew from all over Europe that settled here. And they were supposed to supply, the fresh produce, and there was very little farming experience. So it was supposed to be a model farm. There was a bit of livestock, fruit trees, bit of winemaking. So it's a bit of everything in that initially, before. Quite interesting. After Simon van der Stel passed away, the second owner was a Swedish Captain Olof Berg, who was the second owner, who was married to a free slave, Anna de Koning. And when Olof Berg passed away in the early 1700s, the third owner of Groot Constantia was a free slave, Anna de Koning. So it went through sort of various hands and ownerships, until the Clutes bought the farm. And I think a lot of the history and of the South African wine industry and of Constantia was in that Clute era, when the wines that Napoleon make. It's quite interesting. Those wines were all made here on Groot Constantia. The Clute cellar is still here. Um, the wines that Jane Austen wrote about, all those sort of legendary sort of era, that sort of late 17, early 1800s. All those wines were made young Groot Constantia. So it's quite an amazing long history. And then when Verlogstra killed the vineyards all over the world in the late 1800s, Groot Constantia also took some serious financial strain. It was bought out by the then Cape government, and belonged to the government for quite a few decades, just short of a century, before it was placed into its current position about 30 years ago. Groot Constantia is an independent trust. So Groot Constantia is actually an independent non-profit since the early 1990s. So it's not government owned anymore. It is just Groot Constantia belongs to Groot Constantia Trust. It's a non-profit, where any profits, it goes back into the farm. It's looking after the heritage and the buildings, maintenance, replanting vineyards and stuff like that. So that is where we are today.
That's awesome. It's amazing how the slave and how many of the free slave women actually owned some of our wineries. Another interesting one is Mirati in Stellenbosch.
That's correct, yeah.
The same story. So that's amazing history, isn't it? I mean, and it must be amazing working at such a place.
Yeah, it is. It is like I said. I think it's great. I think where South Africa is at the moment, to be sort of still trying to. I think there's some beautiful wines produced in the area, in the Western Cape. We still sort of bang down the doors for more recognition, and I think people don't realize, that we've been making wine for such a long time. If you take outside Europe. The South African industry, and especially the Constantia wine region, been making wine for a long time. I mean, more than 3 centuries is significant. Like I said, even on an international scale. If you compare that to a lot of other old world European countries, more than 3 centuries is quite significant. So it's quite special. It's also quite nice to have a place like Meerlus that's been in the same family for just over 3 centuries as well. I think it's great for the industry to have that kind of history and heritage, show the international wine world that we're not really sort of new kids in the block. We actually have a very long history to show that we've been doing it for extended period and in it for the long haul.
I think that's one of the things that our industry needs to embrace and also use. The French are very good at it, like you said. They created this whole myth about Dom Perignon, which is all nonsense, and they built out the whole of Champagne on urban legends and all kinds of stories. And we have so many untold stories in the winelands that should actually be told. Somebody should actually make a movie about the wineries and the history of the winelands, because I think that's a story that would actually be very well received worldwide, because we're almost seen as a new world wine region, but like you say, it's actually not true.
No, totally. No, I totally agree with you.
So, Boela, when a guest comes to Groot Constantia, what can they experience when visiting the estate?
So yeah, well, obviously we are very happy to allow people back on the farm for more than a month now. You know what? You can actually spend the whole day. So there's a visitor's route, so you can literally come and sort of do a visitor's route experience. There's the manor house and the old historical cellar that's open from a historical point of view. It's like it really is interesting to walk there, especially the historical cellar. I found that fascinating. There's little artifacts. Obviously, that's quite a few things that's specific to Groot Constantia, but a lot of other artifacts, sort of glass collections and corkscrew collections, very sort of interesting sort of bits and pieces from the wine industry that's in the old historical cellar. And then obviously there's the cellar touring tastings are open again. So yeah, so the farm is open. There even a few picnics at the restaurants also. Yeah, there are 2 restaurants on the farm where the guys can come and have breakfast, the lunches, dinners, Simon's, and the back end of the farm overlooking Constantiaberg and the back of Table Mountain, and obviously there's Jonkershuis as well in the middle of the historical core, right next door to the manor house, overlooking False Bay. Sort of beautiful settings there as well. So yeah, there's a whole day of entertainment. There's even a self-guided vineyard tour if anybody's interested as well. So self-guided audio vineyard tour that people can do, or historical tours as well. That's also possible. Yeah. So there's a lot to do on the farm.
Amazing. Tell me, Boela, in terms of visitor numbers, since you've reopened the restaurants, how are they doing? Are they full? Are people still cautious to come?
Yeah, well, that is, we need to, we've been open for a very short period now, so it's very difficult to give you an indication. It's interesting. We just had a meeting now, and I think before coronavirus, we're sort of guessing, but Groot Constantia must have been one of the most visited wine farms in the world. We've spoken about Champagne once or twice. The previous winemaker, he's retired last year. The previous winemaker of Dom Perignon, it's a gentleman by the name of Richard Geoffroy. He was here a few years ago, and he was absolutely gobsmacked. And he said he thinks, and I'm talking about South Africa in general now. He said, what we have in South Africa as far as wine tourism, he said, we the rest of the wine world country mile ahead. He said, California is a distant second, and after that, not a hell of a lot. But as far as visitors numbers concerned, we used to get between 420 and 450,000 people per year on the farm. I mean, that is significant. Those are significant numbers. Since lockdown, obviously those numbers are seriously down. A lot of those visitors were international. The restaurants are busy, but again, we try to respect social distancing, and obviously, we try to be responsible as well. So it's only 50% of the guests allowed. So both restaurants reduce their numbers by half to allow space between tables and guests and stuff like that. So so the restaurants are full, but running at half the capacity.
Oh, interesting. Boela, now your world, the wines that you are producing. Can you tell us a little bit about the wines you're making at Groot Constantia, and also your own winemaking philosophy?
Yeah, well, the range we make is pretty big. So Groot Constantia, as you probably know, is known for Sauvignon. It's interesting. The Constantia Valley is quite small. The Constantia Valley is about 370 hectares, I think, which is tiny if you take that the South African wine industry is about 92,000. So that is like 0.5%, not even of the South African wine industry. And of that, very close to half of our vineyard lands planted to Sauvignon Blanc. So the Constantia Valley as a whole is quite big on Sauvignon Blanc. Where Groot Constantia is situated, we have more of the valley floor, not so much of the mountain of this Constantiaberg mountain. So we do more reds than whites, but Sauvignon Blanc is definitely a very important part of our business. Yeah, we're very proud of the Sauvignons we produce here, really expressive Sauvignons, some really very intense, very aromatic Sauvignons we produce here. And then Chardonnays. Chardonnay is another one. Chardonnay's been an overachiever in the last 20 years since I've been here. I think, it's quite interesting. If you look at the sales figures, I think in South Africa as a whole, Chardonnays, the volume of Chardonnays declined over the last few years, but the value of Chardonnay sold has increased. So it seems like, people are buying less Chardonnays, but they're buying more expensive Chardonnays.
That's
And what
very
we've seen here in
interesting.
Constantia as well is that our Chardonnay is one of the first white wines to sell out every year. We can't produce enough. I think there's definitely a market for some really top end Chardonnays. I do think South Africa as a whole. I think there's a Chenin Blanc is our biggest variety, and people are very proud of the very interesting Chenins we produce here. But I think Chardonnay is probably one of our country's strongest categories. There's some really world class Chardonnays we produce here. And we've had some great success with that variety on Groot Constantia as well. So the two important white varieties, obviously Chardonnay and Sauvignon. And then on the red side, then we have a flagship white blend as well, what we just call our governor's white. Sauvignon Semillon, barrel fermented Sauvignon Semillon that we keep in bottle for a bit long before we release it. Also some really nice complexity, very sort of interesting layered style of wine. And then the red side, the two big single varietal reds are Shiraz. We still call it Shiraz. Interestingly, we spoke about the history of the farm. So Shiraz, I think it's the second biggest red wine, red varietal in South Africa after Cabernet Sauvignon. But for many years, it was the most new plantings for various reasons. And I think water stress, water supply, sort of global warming, climate change, all those things. I think guys got nervous, and then Shiraz is a very versatile variety. It's quite a hardy variety as well. So it's quite a popular variety, and still is in South Africa. But Groot Constantia has a very long history with this variety. There are references back to Constantia Shiraz going back to, I think it's 1725 or something like that, where there's some German and French viticulturists in the Cape, and they believe that the Constantia Red of the 1720s was actually included some Shiraz. Interesting when there's an estate in Western Australia, Voyager estate that created Groot Constantia with obviously the Shiraz pretty big in Australia, more South Australia than Western Australia, but they created Constantia for the origin of their vines. Obviously, they couldn't send the vines from France all the way around the Cape to Australia. The vines would have died, or the people would have eaten the vines probably at that point. So they actually got their vines from Groot Constantia, and when phylloxera killed all our vineyards around the Cape, we actually got our first plantings of Shiraz in the late 1890s. Didn't come from France. We actually got it back from Voyager Estate. So they credit us for the origin, but then they also say that Voyager Estate saved the South African wine industry by providing us vines in the late 1800s. So so Shiraz is it's one of our biggest red varieties. Some very interesting expression. I think, like I said, some beautiful Shirazes we make in the country. Different areas, Stellenbosch, Swartland. Different expressions of Shiraz, and then the cool climate of Constantia. Obviously, some very aromatic, sort of spicy, sort of floral style Shiraz. Same thing with Peritage. We're the only guys making Peritage here in the Constantia Valley. And again, a very interesting take on the variety. The cooler climates, sort of higher rainfall, brings out a lot more of the feminine side of the Peritage. So the two white varieties in the white blend, and then the two red varieties, main red varieties, and then obviously our red blend, the Governor's Reserve, our Cab Merlot blend. That's our pride and joy. And then the last one is the Groot Constantia, and that is our interpretation of the legend sweet wine that was made here on Groot Constantia, in the 17th and 18th century.
Interesting. You don't make MCC?
You know what, well, we do a lot. You know, we do a bit of rosé as well. We do make an MCC. It's relative small volumes, but we do make MCC. We even make a VSOP brandy. We just bottled the 2014 VSOP brandy. It's beautiful, huh?
My word.
Yeah, so there are bits and pieces, but the main, the sort of main
Hmm.
lines of Groot Constantia is Sauvignon, Chardonnay, the Governor's White, Pinotage, Shiraz, the Governor's Red, and the Sweet. But there are bits and pieces. You know, there's a varietal Merlot. There's yeah, there are bits and pieces of other stuff that we also do.
Well, there's something else that's interesting. You mentioned that you still call Shiraz, or Shiraz, as you say. But the fashion these days is there's been a fashion to call it Syrah. What is the difference? What happened there? Is it a marketing thing, or what
You know,
happened?
well, it's should never underestimate the value in sounding sophisticated. I mean, geez, you can't, you can't make this beautiful perfumed red wine and then call it Shiraz. You know, it sounds very, but it's plat fleurs. You know, yeah, unsophisticated. Now, listen, yeah, I'm joking. There, for some weird reason, and there are theories why South Africa and Australia call it Shiraz, while the rest of the wine world call it Syrah. Interesting, I mentioned Stellenzicht earlier. Andre at Stellenzicht, he made what he thought was a more sort of old world style Shiraz in 1994, and he had to apply to the board, the Wine and Spirits board, to actually call the first Stellenzicht Syrah, to call it Syrah and not Shiraz. So yeah, so Andre now at Vergelegen, and he was actually the first guy. He had to apply to the board to actually call the first wine Syrah in 1994. Well, sold in 95. And I think it is people try to move away from that sort of, you know, big bold style and say, but it's, you know, I think naming the wine Syrah is already sort of, you know, signaling this, you know, this wine is, you know, it's sort of more an old world style rather than sort of, you know, new world sort of in your face style, you know, that's associated with the South Australian Shiraz. But you know, we've been using the name Shiraz for a very, very long time. So for us to sort of change now the name, you know, people got to know Groot Shiraz over the decades, and now to change the name, you know, it didn't really make sense to us. So so even
Yeah, I
though I do
agree.
think our style of wine is probably more Syrah than it is Shiraz. You know, the people know the brand, so we're just sticking with it.
The other thing I wanted to ask you as a Chardonnay expert is, I remember in the early 90s, it used to be a very big fashion to actually make a very the lots of oak and wood in the Shiraz in the Chardonnays, and that seems to have changed over the last few years. What is the development been there?
You know what? That's it's actually quite interesting. You know, the wine world has changed quite a bit, and a lot of these changes started in America. Yes, geez, well, I don't know how
Mm,
much time you have, but so there's a guy called Robert Mondavi, and he was the first guy to use a lot of new oak, and obviously his mates in Napa picked up on that.
hmm.
Because before that, the rest of the world, including France, the whole of France, you know, people used more older barrel. They didn't really use a lot of new oak. And and then shortly after, you may have seen the movie. There was a movie made about the Judgment of Paris, the 1976 tasting that Steven
That's
Spurrier
correct.
did.
When the
Yes,
Americans
and then the
put the France in
Californian
their
wines
place.
knocked this. I
Yeah,
beg your pardon.
when the Americans put the French in their place.
There you go. So then shortly after that was I think then the French obviously saw that, and they you know, they started to pick a bit riper. You know, sort of more new oak, and then another phenomenon by the name of Robert Parker happened. So all these things
Mm.
happened, you know, sort of, you know, between 76 and 82 vintage, Bordeaux vintage. I think also a riper vintage and more sort of more new oak, and these wines got more rewarded. So people went from the early 70s to pretty much only replacing barrels when they had to sort of, you know, early 1980s, when new oak was actually a significant part of the style of the wine, because of what I just said, because of those sort of things that happened, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s. And I think that well, fortunately, I was still at school at the time, but I think the wine world made mistakes. I think guys overdid it. Maybe not the correct oak. There was even the oak industry went through quite a few phases over the years, and I think that's what happened. People recognized something, and then American oak also came into play. I think people they recognized the oak, and it was overdid. They overdid it. And if I say they, when I started making wine in the mid '90s, you know, I was also guilty of that. You know, it's very difficult not to give like a big, bold Pinotage or Shiraz, or give it a lot of new American oak or a lot of toasty French oak for a bold and ripe style Chardonnay. So I think that's what we did, and we very quickly realized. I think the South African wine industry probably ahead of the curve. We quickly realized, but this year we're not doing ourselves any favor. I think there's the whole new oak thing may work, and maybe in Australia and California, but it doesn't really add value. It really sort of kills the personality of our wines here. We don't.
Mm.
So I think we got over that very quickly. But I agree with you. Very buttery, very big, very oaky. The reds and whites that we made in the that we made in the 90s. But fortunately, I think we saw the light, and I think a lot of guys trying to rein in on the oak use and also rein in on the ripeness. It's not acceptable, to produce these 15 plus alcohol wines. People try to sort of rein it in and get more freshness, so that's definitely a style that came and went.
Well, interesting. We can talk about this more at another time. Boela, your wines, where are most of them sold?
Yeah. Well, obviously a different answer than I would have given you a year ago. So
I can believe that.
So,
yes.
so we try to balance our local sales and our domestic sales and our international sales. So, just sort of to simplify, Groot Constantia used to be like half local, half export. Sometimes a bit more here, a bit more there, but that's normally what we try to aim for. Is like half domestic, half export. Of the domestic sales, a large chunk of that, probably half of the half, so 25% sold off the farm. Traditionally. That's obviously changed. So because like I said, international tourism was quite a big part of our setup here, and that's changed. So there's still you still get a lot of visitors. The fact that in the current lockdown sort of regulations, we can't sell wines over Saturdays and Sundays is not great. Because we still get a lot of visitors. The farm is busy and over the weekends, but people can't buy wine. So we need to think clever how we're going to address that. But yeah, so exactly where our wines are sold now, it's changed. We don't know. We'll probably get a sales figure at the end of the month and see where we are. But we fortunately it's quite interesting. I see that there was also one of your emailers, you have that hashtag Save SA Wine on one of your mailers, and
That's
it's quite
right.
interesting. I think that's done. There was amazing initiative that we've seen, especially in UK and Northern Europe, and we've seen a spillover of that into the US as well. We've had some really great support from the US as well. And it's actually showing in our sales figures. We've seen really good support from, again, our big clients, Northern Europe, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, UK as well, and then even the US, so we've seen some great support, Southeast Asia as well. We've seen some great support from international. So our international sales are actually up. So we're leaning more on international exports just purely because, we don't have the local sales. The restaurants are trying, but obviously they have their limitations as well. And I think a lot of the guys in the domestic market are a bit cash strapped. So we've seen at the moment people are, I suppose it depends who you talk to. Some people say that, people are trading down, buying sort of more entry level. Other people in the wine industry say, they're selling fewer wine, but sort of, higher end. So it really depends where you go to. But but the local sales are not as good as they used to be.
Well, it's interesting when we started that Save SA Wine Group, how people from overseas actually supported the South African wine industry. The support from abroad, I think, stunned people into action in terms of that they realized that our wine is actually more important to. It was almost as if our wine was more important to the buyers overseas than it was to our own people here.
It was crazy, but we had there was a Facebook group of Save SA Wine. I'm not sure if you saw what happened there, but we got random.
We actually started that group. I started
Good man, because I had random messages from people all over the world that thank you very much for that. That said to me, listen, here I'm sitting in Scotland, or old school friend, that's sitting somewhere else, or just like a random guy from Germany. Listen, I'd like to buy your wine. So that's been really good. I think so there's obviously sort of secondary sales that I'm not even aware of that it initiated. and a lot of direct stuff as well. We just sort of sent direct messages with links and ways, put them in contact with our distributors and wherever they were. So that was thank you very much for initiating that. Well, it was a great initiative, and I think it definitely gained a lot of momentum. We were surprised because initially, we had messages, some of our importers were a bit nervous, wasn't sure whether they could honor our export agreements. Eventually came back, it's fine, they will order it, they will honor it, and then come back later, but listen, they may need some more, and that's quite happened in quite a few markets. So that really picked up amazing momentum, and it's really helped us with our
I
cash
think,
flow for the
I think
last few months. Otherwise, we may have had some problems.
well, I'll come have a free glass of wine when I see you for that one. Uh,
Yeah, oh, you more than a glass, mate.
I it's interesting. The most interesting story I heard, Bula, is some guy that actually one day posted that he walked in Waitrose in the UK and he saw somebody buying wine off the shelf and they were buying a New Zealand wine. So he approached his people and said, "No, put those wines back and buy a South African wine." So, so it's crazy, right? People got really emotional about it. That might be a guy from overseas calling in an order there.
No, it's lekker. No, that's fantastic. No,
Fantastic.
don't. No, it's an internal call.
Oh, I
It's an
see.
internal call. Sorry about that. I don't know how to reroute my phone.
No worries, Bula. You have a wine club at Groot Constantia. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
You know what, Will? There, your timing is not great because we are having a fresh look at our whole sort of digital and online. Yes, so we do have a wine club.
Hmm.
Um, so at the, so yeah, so there's a wine club where there are two different wine clubs where people can join. And yeah, go to the website where they will find different offerings. We are actually working on that at the moment.
Okay.
Again, it's quite interesting how these things work. It seems like wine clubs sort of, they had their day and they were fading, and it seems like they're really picking up again at the moment. So we definitely we are busy with the process. Literally in the next few days, sort of relaunch a new club and getting sort of better offerings. But we are looking at people do become members. Get the first get news, get information if there are any specials, any new releases. To keep the club members informed. Pre-order if there are new vintages of small lots of wines. Small bits and pieces. That they can't be part of that. So we have a wine club, and obviously there's a discount as well. If on the wine, so there's no sign up cost, or there's no nothing. You can just sort of join the club if you go to the website, www.grootconstantia.co.za. Go to the website and sign up for the club, and then yeah, there are discounts and some specials on there as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Bula, yeah, I mean, you're mentioning just the changes and everything. I mean, the coronavirus has forced all of us to rethink our business models. I think the buzzword of the time is called direct to consumer and all of these things. And you mentioned online, do you guys, what are you guys doing in terms of rethinking your business models? And do you have any changes or new ideas in mind?
We again, well, it's difficult to say, but we are. I think because I think in the past, I think the whole website, the whole offering was more to get people on the farm. That's what we always try to do, get people on the farm. So the website was more experiential rather than sort of commercial. But if people wanted to buy wine, it was actually impossible to buy wine. You had to sort of click, and then they send you an email, and then you get a quote, and then you say what you want, and then you get a quote. It was actually surprisingly geriatric what we had there, and that has been streamlined. Just sort of on that people, if they actually want wine on a Saturday night, to sit there and they read something or they see something that's quite interesting, to go to the website and literally sort of click and get it through. So so we definitely from a digital sort of point of view, we streamlined that. And that is where we are now. There may be a few other things as well, sort of digital, that because it seems like the whole world is going more digital. I'm sure you've seen the same in your circle of friends as well. People don't go into the office anymore.
Yeah.
Lot of offices standing empty. I went out with my wife a couple of weeks ago to the city centre, Bree Street, and it's actually sort of so shocking to see sort of empty buildings to let for sale in prime areas in Cape Town. So I think a lot is moving to the business moving sort of online, and it's something that we can also consider. I do think a place like Groot Constantia, if you come here, you have to experience this. You have to sit here and sort of look at Table Mountain, look at False Bay, sort of sit here in the vineyards, and I think once we get people here, this is what we want. We want people to come to the farm and really experience that. But for the geez, I don't know, next probably 12 months, if not more, it's going to be difficult. International travel is going to be difficult. Even domestic travel is going to be difficult. So we are looking at sort of giving people a more at least some digital experience, if they don't have the possibility of coming here, but they can have some experience, and just have experience a piece of Groot Constantia until they have the opportunity to come here again.
So if you're talking about digital experiences, what do you have in mind? Do you have like virtual tastings, that type of thing, or more like videos of the, what are you planning?
No, that is, that's still, we are playing around with a few people, to see if we can do sort of, 3D and those kind of experiences.
Oh, my word, yeah.
If it is, we'll see if it is viable and possible to do it. So we've done some work, but to see if it is going to be possible, we're still getting there.
Well, a few people I've spoken to I think everybody realizes that we're going to have what I call an arid tourist season. We're going to have a tourism winter, not a tourism summer, because we honestly, I don't think we're going to have any international tourists at all. I think even business people I read today are struggling to get permission to come to South Africa. So the chances of tourists coming is very, very slim. So that means the only market that's really left is the local market. And a lot of the Stellenbosch wineries and some of them are changing the menus in the restaurants, and obviously places that have accommodation are giving accommodation specials. What are you guys doing to attract local people?
This we haven't done a big drive for to get more local people here. We're very fortunate to be on the Red Bus tour. So they do bring a fair amount of people. I think what we can do as well is just make people more aware by social media, to make people aware. Listen, yeah, we are open. The restaurants are open. So that's pretty as much as we can do. So the estate is still pretty much alive. But I agree with you. I mean, the local market is definitely very important. It's important to us. But yeah, we haven't sort of activated any plan to get.
Lucky that if Cape Town does something, and I think Cape Town will probably say to themselves, Cape Town Tourism will probably say, look, we've been rigged for international tourism for years. Now it's a chance for the guy sitting north that couldn't afford a Cape Town holiday because he was competing with international buyers to come down to Cape Town. But if the guy comes to Cape Town, there's a very good chance that will come to Groot Constantia. I think you're a natural visit.
Yeah, well, it's, if I say that we are not, it's not that we are not doing something. It's very possible that Lila, because Lila, our marketing manager, is also on the board of Cape Town Tourism and the Big Seven. So Groot Constantia is part of a lot of the Cape Town tourism.
So it's part of a bigger picture. Yeah, I understand what you're
saying. So like I said, there are quite a few initiatives as well. So we definitely are. But to be quite honest, we've always tried to, you can't only rely on the international guys, So we are trying. You need to look after the local tourists, because the international tourists, there's seasons, especially in winter time, there's a lull, so you can't neglect the local tourists. So we are always trying to sort of get the locals. That's why they're trying to get the local tourists and get the locals. Yeah, it's important. That's why we also open. Even when lockdown allowed it, we allowed people to came back into the farm, even though they couldn't buy wine. We said to them, listen, yeah, it's fine. Come walk on the farm, walk your dog. Yeah, sort of just experience this, even though we couldn't sell wine to them. So we tried to look after the local tourists, even though we couldn't sell wine to them. We tried to sort of make the guys welcome here and then welcome them back onto the estate. So we are trying to get people back into the farm.
Boela, this has been a difficult year, and I think a lot of people learned a few new things, but also you've got 20 years of experience just at Groot Constantia alone almost. So what is the most important thing that you've learned from your wine journey?
Yes, well, I'll be very honest. I don't think anything that I learned in the last 20 years could prepare us for what happened, for what happened now. So yeah, I don't know what I learned from wine. Um, it's a tricky question. I think, but I'm sure that most people would have experienced. I think whatever you do, it's often just a sort of microcosm of the bigger thing. Sort of trends we see in the wine industry. It's interesting. The wine industry has gone through. The wine industry has gone through. The sort of changes, sort of the bigger guys were more popular 20 years ago. And then there was this whole financial meltdown in 2008. And then people went for the more smaller, like craft beer and craft gin. They went for craft wine and the smaller sort of against the odds. So we often see that the wine industry is just a smaller sort of version of really what's happening out there. But what we've seen in the wine industry, and it's often the guys, yeah, it's difficult to explain. But it's no, just, I'm not going to word this correctly, yeah, but it's in a lot of industries, people say, it's what you put in. What you put in is what you get out. But the wine industry, it's literally that. So if you say what you put in, literally sort of wine tasting, what you experience, because what you experience and what you do, that becomes your reality. So what we try to do is also, try to travel as much as possible, sort of experience different areas, different wines, different regions, and sort of, try to experience as much as possible, and sort of, sort of take in as much as possible, and sort of use that, and then try to sort of distill it down to what we do. Yeah. I've been very fortunate to be involved in a 300-year-old estate, but things are not stagnant. We spoke about wine styles, and I can see how styles change here on Groot Constantia. We have a library of wine going back 50, 60 years, even more. Actually, sort of some of the wines go back to the late 1700s, and our styles have changed here. So you need to sort of really be sort of, part of that wine world, and which is not always a bad thing. Sort of, see what happens in the rest of the wine world, and if there's anything good that we can apply here, then just sort of make it part of our world. Yeah. So I'm not really answering your question now, am I?
No, I think it's interesting. It's very interesting. So, okay, well, as a last, I always ask everybody this: you've got to give us a wine quote. You can either have your own one, or you can plagiarize somebody.
Wine quote. Yeah, I'm not very good at wine quotes. Um, I think it's very similar. I think it really ties in with what I just said now. There's a very common quote in the wine industry is, life is too short to drink bad wine. I remember when I started making wine, and actually reminded Andre about it recently. Andre said to me, don't drink cheap wine. As a young sort of winemaker in the industry, you're not always having the budget. You sort of go for the budget ends, but you need to. Another winemaker, Mark Kent, he also said, you can't make the best wine in the world if you don't drink the best wines in the world. So that is what we are trying to do. It's like, life is too short to drink bad wine, and that's what we're trying to do. I think also there's a whole big drive now about responsible use of alcohol in our industry, and that's what we are trying to do. We'd rather have people sort of drink less wine but drink better wine. So that is what we'd like people to do.
So, Boela, thank you very, very much for spending the time. It's been very, very interesting. I think our listeners will love this. If they want to get hold of you or want to get hold of Groot Constantia, how do people get hold of you guys?
Obviously at the website www.grootconstantia.co.za, or if there's any questions, they can email me, boela.gerber@grootconstantia.co.za.
Excellent. Boela, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and I'd love to talk to you again in future.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you for supporting our show. If you would like to get more exposure for your business, please have a look at our sponsorship options. Thanks again for supporting About the Winelands. Please follow us on YouTube and on our social media channels. All details and links are in the description.